I'm Maribel Guevara, the Active Cinema Manager. Welcome to the Q&A of this film, Reflection, A Walk with Water, with director Emmett Brennan. Emmett, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I would like to start by asking you why or how did you happen to choose this very complex, probably even intimidating topic as water in a very important year, I think, for water resources and water issues mainly in California. How did you happen to decide on making a film about water?
Yeah, well, I grew up on the East Coast in Maine, and it's very abundant with water over there. So when I moved to California about 8 years ago now, the contrast was just very transparent to me. And I'd already been really interested in ecology and in looking at ways that we can kind of redesign our systems to be more supportive of life, human systems. And yeah, coming to California and being introduced to a certain community of people who are focusing on ecological issues, and then just seeing how much water is at the foundation of all of it. Water is just the connecting matrix. So I wanted, as a filmmaker, to tell a hopeful story about what's possible for us as a species. And water seemed like the best vehicle to just kind of look at the deeper issues underlying the trend towards desiccation and death that we're living in. So, yeah.
And how did it happen? I really appreciate the effort to make it a hopeful film and positive and not really depressing as most environmental films used to be. How did you encounter all these amazing people making these differences? Was it, did you started looking for them, or did they come into your life? I would love to know, how did you find, because all of them are in many regions, but also doing very specific stuff, some things I haven't even heard of.
Yeah. It was a pretty easy process of connecting with all these people, because they're all either friends or friends of friends. They're just within a community of people who are working in a similar way to reimagine how we're doing human life and human habitation. So it kind of happened that I would go and film with this person, and then we would have discussions, and we'd just talk about the shape of the film and what the direction of it was. And they would offer the next person, or they'd be like, do you know this person? Have you spent any time with them? They could be a really good fit. So it's kind of like a little river in that way, where each character kind of just pointed the way to the next, which was an interesting way to do it, because I can say that I had a compass of what the film was. I could feel the vision of the film, but I didn't have a really clearly laid out storyline to the film in the beginning. It wasn't like we had the storyboard set and then we filmed. It was really the filming process informed what the story was going to be. So once we got to the editing room was when it was like, okay, what do we do now? What's the story we're telling? How do we weave all this together?
Great. And how did you find, or how any Californian finds out about this water in LA, from the water source to the city that you took part of, which again, it's very unique, and I wish more people knew about it. How does that happen? Who organizes it? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Are you talking about the pilgrimage, the walk?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I again found out about it just through mutual connections, and it felt like such a beautiful, heart-centered way of being with the grief of these times, while also engaging with a real specific story of how we are relating with water right now. And the story of LA and the Owens Valley and the indigenous people of that place is just so reflective of so many themes that we're dealing with right now. And I was just really drawn to the ethos of this walk, where it was about witnessing and hearing from all of the different stakeholders and people who were touched by the water story of that place. So the indigenous people, the farmers and the ranchers, just the local people of the Owens Valley, the people of LA, the Department of Water and Power, anyone who has some sort of relationship. The walk intended to sit with and meet and talk and listen. And then also just, walking through the legacy of this place where water once was, and going slowly enough to touch that reality and to hear the stories of the people who have lived in that area for thousands of years, and try to connect with the image of what that place once was and what it's become as a result of this taking of water. And then, the film tries to dive more deeply into the question of whether LA even needs to be taking that water, and the fact that our design paradigm is not allowing LA to utilize the water that's falling on top of it. And just these kind of cognitive dissonances that are running the show in a lot of cases.
Now that you mentioned that part of your film, I wanted to ask, after filming all these incredible examples of what things should be done, what do you think is the most doable thing that can be scaled up that will help with this water issue? Let's say in California to start, where we are all familiar with.
Yeah, well, that's a really hard question, because the personal decisions that we can make are super important, if not systemically, even more so just spiritually and how it orients us as beings and connects us. But also, we need just some major overhauls of our systems and policies. And yeah, so if there's a way that we can push on that end, that's very important. But from a personal perspective, or maybe a day-to-day thing, well, maybe anecdotally, I can share just an interesting story of where I live, which is in the forest. We have a shower. Well, all of our systems, our sinks and our showers, the water is just running straight back into the ground. And we have a well where we're pulling water from. So we're pulling water from a well, showering, and then the water's just going right back into the aquifer. So after living here for as many years as I have, I really feel the impact of that circle. Water's coming and then going back. And now when I shower or use a sink or something in a typical situation, I feel the flattening of that line very clearly. And I'm impacted deeply by that. And I feel like if we can move more into that circle as a population, then we're doing something good there. So if people are interested in learning how to create those kind of gray water systems, I highly encourage that. And then, well, I don't know. There's lots that I could say about like the action item steps, but I don't know if this is exactly.
We can do that.
Well, I would say that looking at the indigenous people of your area and finding a way to support them, because these are people who are still here and who hold a really important framing and knowledge of how to relate with the earth. And so in the Owens Valley, the Paiute people, and looking at Walking Water as an organization, seeing what they're doing. In the Owens Valley particularly, there's an effort called Keep Long Valley Green, which is trying to kind of renegotiate some of the water terms with the Department of Water and Power and rehydrate this riparian habitat. And then the Greenville Rancheria tribe, which is up in the Dixie Fire area, they just had their whole offices and homes burned to the ground. And they're part of something that's called the Maidu Summit Consortium, which is a huge swath of land that was rematriated and given over by PG&E to the indigenous people of this area. And they're doing a lot of work with beaver and trying to just revitalize the waterways there. And the Green Valley Rancheria tribe was a big part of that consortium. So there's an effort to help them out right now if you want to look into that. Then there's Run for Salmon and the Winnemem Wintu up in Mount Shasta, and they're trying to help the waterways over there. What else? the Amamutsan Land Trust. Those are the Ohlone people in the South Bay who are doing a lot of work with fire. Mm. And then Margot Robbins and the Cultural Fire Management Council, they're doing a lot of work trying to set up prescribed burns and bring the indigenous knowledge of prescribed burns to a lot of California. So Cultural Fire Management Council. And people can look into these things, and there are trainings to do prescribed burns. And now we're moving into burns and fire, but everyone who's watching this Q&A has seen the film, right?
Yes.
So that's good. So you have a little bit of an understanding of the connection of the water and fire. And yeah, maybe that's enough.
Great. I think your approach of definitely highlighting the indigenous communities, as you said, right now in your film with water and water management, what they did, but at the same time, now we are again in another fire season. And again, it goes back at how mismanaged really has the territory been since it was taken over from indigenous people. So I really appreciate you giving them a voice and the first choice to help. And what about water and agriculture and food? Because obviously in California, again, we're producing a lot of the food, not just for the state, but for the country. And water gets a very intense use for these purposes. How do you think should be balanced from maybe the things you learned through making the film? What should be the most important thing that probably as a consumer, when we go and buy products, is there any way we find out how water intense produces are, or how some farms are using more efficiently than others? Like, for example, the people that are growing food in your film that are truly using the best systems to keep the water and the soil healthy and with water and not dry it up.
Yeah.
How can you tell us about what you learned from this?
Yeah, this is so complex because it becomes an economic and access issue too. And a lot of the more organic regenerative style farms are harder to access depending on where you are. And so it's hard to put any sort of expectation on the consumer to like sort through and find the thing that's using less water and is better for the environment. It's a tough terrain out there as a consumer, and our policies and our subsidies aren't going very often towards the people who are trying to front and center the proper use of water and the healthy treatment of land. I think that there are some kind of like organic is a tag that is put on food. I think they're working on creating some sort of tag that will identify how responsible they are around the health of the land that they're farming. Are you aware of that? Do you know what it's called?
I don't. I wouldn't be surprised, but I believe personally, I would say that if there's one more tag in many of these products, it's going to be even more confusing because we already have so many that if you want to be a responsible consumer, you're focusing on. But then if there's one more, but I will say it's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's a massive undertaking just because the scale of our agriculture is enormous in California and all around the world, and being such a hub of the distribution of food for the world. But with that said, and recognizing that it's a tall order, I love the vision of people really looking to meet their produce and vegetable needs in their communities, because we have so much lawn space and so much rooftop space that's capturing water. And if we just figured out a way to create cooperative systems or something where people are growing their produce in their yards and supporting feeding the community, and then we can get our staples like rices and wheats and things from other situations. But it's really easy to grow vegetables abundantly in a small amount of space, and just relying on neighborhood models would do a lot for conserving water and not having these enormous monocultured, sprinkler fed, aqueduct dried systems. So I'm not necessarily proposing that as like the solution. I'm just saying it's a beautiful vision to me.
Yeah. And on your vision, and I think to end this conversation, do you feel hopeful about this issue?
Oh, I don't know. Honestly, I oscillate. I oscillate, but I feel like the motion of learning how to connect with land and place and establish deeper connection to the trees around me, to the animals and the plants, and just working to be a responsible steward and learn what that even means. That is like a means in itself. It's worth it, whether or not the outcome is positive or that we like make it through this era unharmed, or whatever that means. It's just like the quality of love and care that comes from learning to reconnect is the means in the end. It makes it worth it. And so I'm just putting my attention there, and then I'm hopeful, and I'm more resourced to feel hopeful from that place. But it's hard to see where we're going.
Yeah, it is. What's the plan for the film after the festival? Our festival, where will it play? Do you have a distribution plan yet?
We have some bunch more festivals that we'll be going to and doing that whole thing. And then we're working with our sales team to try to sell the film and figure out like how does this thing actually get out there in a meaningful way and create the kind of impact that it's capable of having. So we have a road ahead to figure that out and put this film to good use. So unclear at this point, but we're figuring it out.
Well, thank you so much, Emmett, for letting us show your film and for your time having this conversation and on your passion, your work. The film really shows how much you care, and we appreciate you putting your little bit of yourself in it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for screening the film.
Thanks.